How's it going, Second Rising Fire fans? It's Grant from Ye Catch Miniatures, bringing you another of our faction overview series, fresh and revamped for Season 6, with a little twist today. We're going to go back to House Baratheon, and I'm once again joined by my good friend, Kurt Belisarius. How's it going, man?
Hey, good to see you again, Grant.
Also, man. Cheers for coming back on again. I know you've already been on the once, so I've tortured you and made you come in again for a second round. But we need to talk about Stannis this time. Are you ready to get into the red priests of the Rhllor?
Let's talk about the Manus.
Stannis the Manus. Cool. Okay, so just to go over some stuff that we sort of covered briefly in Renly, and just so people know what we're talking about. So with House Baratheon, we've got this split loyalty identity where, you know, we've got the Stannis side and the Renly side. It's both the same faction with a very, I'll say a slight difference, but it's not even really a slight difference. There's quite a lot of different units they can use. But just in your own words, Kurt, could you want to go over sort of like the faction difference and what Stannis perhaps gives to us different than Renly does?
I would say Stannis has a certain aggressive aspect to him that differs from Renly loyalty. Stannis has access to a faith mechanic through the Rhllor faith that kind of gives him access to a panic kind of play style. And he also has more access, I would say, to the condition token game than Renly loyalty does.
Awesome. And in the last episode, we saw when we spoke about the difference in factions, we spoke a little bit about the fact that people are really missing out if they don't sort of take both sides of the loyalty in these split lists, two list format that we have. Is it so with the difference between the two loyalties? What game modes perhaps, or what sort of other factions does Stannis play into better than you would say that Renly does?
I would say Stannis handles opposing panic factions better than Renly does. A lot of those Rhllor units tend to have good morale values themselves, and so he has some staying power to resist those panic attacks in a way that Renly just doesn't have the same tools.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So today we're looking at Stannis Baratheon. So I don't think we really need to go into sort of the faction identity as deeply as we did for Renly, because obviously we've already covered that. Hopefully anyone listening to this has listened to Renly as well. If you haven't, I really recommend you go and check that out, because again, we're talking about the same faction, but they are very much different play styles. Has Season 6, though, in general, been good to Stannis Baratheon loyalty?
I'd say with you know, it always depends, right? With any patch, there's gonna be things that go better for a faction and things that go worse. So, like I could highlight a couple things where I think Stannis loyalty is doing better. I think the Red Priestess change was a really strong change for Stannis loyalty, and then I could also highlight things where I think the faction took a step back. I think they're kind of bread and butter 4 combat unit 3 NCU style is kind of broken a bit and doesn't fit and take full advantage of these new 4 free attachment points very well. So I would say there's pros and cons.
Okay, so you feel like they're going to struggle to spend the 4 points, you feel? Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, that's really interesting then. Okay, well, I can't wait to sort of get into it then. So we're going to go over some of these the units that we've already covered in the previous thing. But obviously, for people listening that are brand new to the faction, when we speak to Kurt on these units, this is basically we're going to be talking about them purely from a Stannis loyalty side and what they give to Stannis. Obviously, the two factions, the two loyalties, slightly different. So we're just going to go over them again just to make sure we've covered all sides. So without further ado, we get stuck back into some of these units. So first and foremost, we see our Baratheon Wardens again. Again, it's a 5-point unit that we get with the starter set, a quite solid defensive unit. So they've got a movement of 4, so quite slow. They have the Warhammer attack ability, 654, hitting on a 4+. They have a 3+ armor save and a 6+ morale, so quite a decent defensive profile. They come with a Warhammer attack ability, so if the defender rolls 1 on any defense dice after this attack is completed, they become weakened. So it's a nice token play there that you mentioned. And also they come with counter strike. So each time this unit is attacked with a melee attack, for each miss, the attacker suffers 1 hit. So from a Stannis loyalty side, Kurt, what are we thinking about Baratheon Wardens?
I think with this unit, you kind of have to compare them to other units on the roster. You have to decide if you want to save points or if you would want to push for a more premium unit. And what really comes to mind is the comparison between this unit and Queensmen, the R'hllor Faithful Queensmen. Both are sturdy units that can hold a point. Both are speed 4. Both have 3-up armor saves. Queensmen just do a little bit better of a job at holding an objective, a key objective, than Wardens do, but they come at 2 points more expensive. So if you want to save the points, then you probably want to go Wardens. And then again, if you're really wanting to save points, then you have a cheaper option with another unit in the solo Dragonstone Noble. So I kind of find these Wardens in this kind of weird middle ground where it's like they're a little bit more survivable than a Dragonstone Noble is because they have 12 wounds, so they can hold an objective. Queensmen can hold even better, but they're more expensive. Well, they're cheaper, but the Dragonstone Noble's even cheaper than they are. So there's kind of like this awkward middle ground, and I don't think you'll necessarily want these in your list all too often, but they are an option as just a cheap objective holder.
Yeah, awesome. Obviously, yeah, you mentioned the Queens, and we'll get to them, but I often find that is the hard bit for these guys is to sort of, but we'll get to it in a minute. So I mean, I always felt from the start set options that, I mean, and it's sort of hinted at slightly, the Baratheon Wardens obviously got the Baratheon standard, and this next unit we're going to look at now, the Baratheon Sentinels, have got the R'hllor image on their standard. Now I don't know if maybe it was always going to be a choice that these were both eventually, well, both initially were going to start as 5-point units, and the Sentinels were going to be the 5-point Stannis fit unit, and the Wardens were the 5-point Renly unit, because it just seems strange they've got the different banners, but it definitely feels like Sentinels want to play a bit more into that aggressive play style that Stannis have. So we'll go over the rules again. So we've got a 5-point unit. They've got a 5-inch move. They've got the double Warhammer attack profile, which is a 754, hitting on a 4+, with 4+ armor save and a 6+ morale, so a slightly less defensive profile than the Wardens. But then they get the order Sentinel, which is after another friendly unit in long range is attacked, this unit perform 1 charge or maneuver action. If charging, it must target the attacker, and the double hammer's ability comes with Thundering Standard. So, Baratheon Wardens, do these play a better role for Stannis, perhaps, than the Wardens?
I think they do, and I think for a lot of the same reasons that I think their stock went up on Renly's side, I think their stock has gone up on Stannis' side. With access to, these free attachment points, you can now stick some attachment points that really help this unit overcome some of its shortcomings from the past. I spoke last episode about how Sentinel, while it can be a really good order, has that issue where it overlaps triggers with 2 of your base tactics dex cards, Final Strike and Baratheon Justice, and so that was always kind of a problem. And then the other problem they had was once they were engaged, Sentinel no longer does anything, and then hitting on force was always a problem for a unit that's supposed to be an offensive unit. Now we've seen the change with Baratheon True Conviction on the Stannis side, and a lot of the Stannis attachments that can give this unit rerolls, and that can solve that issue they have of only hitting on 4s after they get stuck in, after they've used their Sentinel order. So I think this unit has more value now, and you could start to put this in your list and feel good about it.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. I mean, we spoke about in the last episode that the models are great, so it'd be really nice to see them played more. That's really, really great rundown. It's really nice to hear you positive about the Sentinels. Next up, we have the Baratheon Halberdiers. So again, this is now a 6-point unit, so moving up in the unit points. They have a 5-inch move. They have a halberd attack ability, which is 774 attack depreciation on hitting on a 4+. Now 774 is really nice. It's very much similar to like other halberdier units and spearman units. They have a 3+ armor save and a 6+ morale. So obviously that movement of 5 and a 3+ armor save is something we don't see too often on units. So that's really great to see that. Or say not we don't see it too often. It's creeping back into the game now. Then we have the Order Taunt. So when an enemy in long range activates, if that enemy could attack or charge this unit and declares any action other than an attack or charge that targets this unit this turn, before performing an action, that enemy becomes vulnerable and weakened, and the halberd comes with the keyword Sundering. So again, we made comparisons to the Sentinels last time. Is that similar for the Stannis side, or do these perform a different role for Stannis?
I think so. I think they're once again somewhat similar to the Sentinels in that they're both speed 5 and they both have Sundering and they both hit on 4s. Now, you do have one better morale, or sorry, not morale, one better armor save on these halberdiers. So if you're willing to pay that extra point, they can also they can also kind of pull a dual purpose, as they can be this kind of offensive unit that hits with Sundering, or they can also kind of sit on an objective point and hold it with that 3-up armor save. And so you have to decide, do you have the points available for that? And are you wanting, is that 1 point extra worth it for you or not, as opposed to just running a unit of Wardens to hold or a unit of Sentinels to attack? Halberdiers, they're kind of, this hybrid unit almost. They can do a little bit of both. They come in 1 point more expensive, and it's up to you to decide with the list you're building at that time if that's worth it for you.
I really like these 3 non-loyalty specific units. I really like the fact that you've got one that is quite clearly offensive, one that's quite clearly defensive, and you've got the halberdiers at 1 point more, but try and cover both roles in a more diluted fashion. I quite like that. I quite like it. Gives that flexibility. I just wonder how much life they've got with the attachment points. If you're saying that Stannis potentially is going to struggle to spend those points, we're going to be looking at more expensive attachments for the units we actually have, I guess.
I'll say once again, these guys would love to have the true conviction that some of those Stannis loyalty attachments bring, because once again, they're hitting on 4s. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't point out that these models are once again just some of the most beautiful models in the game. I love the way these guys look.
Yeah. I don't play Baratheons loads. I'd say I play them probably. I probably play them once in every 4 games, but yeah, I bought 2 boxes of halberdiers just because the miniatures are awesome. And yeah, again, this great models. Okay, awesome. So next up we have the Crownland Scouts. So this is our first cavalry unit that we see that potentially can be taken by Stannis. It's a 6-point unit. They have a 5-inch move, the longsword attack ability, which is 7/4 attack profile, hitting on a 4+. So again, that 4+ to hit. They have a 4+ morale, a 6+, 4+ armor save, a 6+ morale. They come with the order marked target, so start with friendly turn, target one enemy in line of sight and long range, they become vulnerable. They also come with the order tactical reposition, so start with any turn, target one friendly unit in short range, they perform a 3-inch shift, so that's a start the enemy turn. So you need to be on really aware of the game flow and that sort of the movement of the game. And they come with the cavalry rule. We'll see this again, so I'm only going to read it at once. Each model in this unit has 3 wounds. At the start of this unit's activation, it may perform 1 maneuver action. Crownland Scouts, this is the 3rd time we've now spoken about Crownland Scouts, and they still look great. Do they offer something different to Stannis than they would Renly?
I would say yes, insofar as Stannis loyalty has native long-ranged archer units in the Rhllor Lightbringers. So you can use that tactical reposition to your Lightbringers take a shot on an enemy to then shift them out of range of your opponent being able to fire back on your opponent's turn. Whereas Renly just doesn't have a native long-range unit. He can access long-range by taking Golden Company crossbows or Stormcrow archers, but then he has to dip into his neutral pool to do that. So insofar as Stannis has native long-range units, Crownland Scouts gives him that edge there. And so Crownland Scouts are a little bit more valuable to a Stannis player than they would be to a Renly player.
Awesome. Not to get too much into it now, but I'll just quickly touch on it because it will come later on properly. Obviously, Baratheons, Stannis Loyalty have the only mounted commander for Baratheons in Stannis 3, which we're going to go over later on in the game. Later on in the video.
Yes.
Do they help that commander play a little bit better?
Yes, and if for no other reason than there's just another option there, right?
Yeah.
In the past, you had Stannis mounted King at the Wall, comes with insight and I want to say stubborn tenacity. And so insight gives maximum dice and vicious.
Yep.
So he kind of locked himself out of being run with flayed men. Okay, so then your options were down to Hedge Knights, Zorse Riders, and Champions of the Stag. We've seen Champions of the Stag take some steps back, and we've seen a neutral cap be implemented, so you could only take 12 points of neutrals. So you couldn't even double up on Hedge Knights or a Hedge Knight and a Zorse Rider. You could at most take 2 Zorse Riders or 1 Hedge Knight. So it's great if for no other reason than it gives him another unit that he can take in his list, another option. And we'll get to Stannis 3 later. I think he still has problems that this unit alone does not solve.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I mean, but that's a problem for Stannis Commander rather than this unit. This unit still, again, we talk about the miniatures. These miniatures are really, really nice, right?
Yeah, beautiful. Once again, love the sculpts, and just a great support piece, a great utility piece. They're not going to be, a wrecking ball offensively. They're not going to be a stonewall defensively, but they're going to fill that role of being a support unit very, very, very well.
Awesome. Okay, then next we get into the Stag Knights. Again, personally, I feel these are a very iconic looking unit for House Baratheon as a whole. We're not going to get into it right now, but I mean, I can't wait to see what potentially Robert Baratheon can bring to the non-loyalty specific identity units. And I hope he does something to really get these to be played more. So let's go over the Stag Knight. So they're a 7-point unit, a 5-inch move. They have a 3+ to hit profile and a 7/6/5. They have a 4+ armor save and a 5+ morale. They come with the order resilience. So when an enemy is performing an attack on this unit after attack dice are rolled, this unit only suffers 1 wound for every 2 unblocked hits. And Stag's Fury. So this attack gains the following based on the game round effects cumulative. So on game round 2, they gain critical blow. On game round 3, they gain vicious. On game round 4, they gain sundering. And on game round 5, they deal +1 hit for each of this unit's remaining ranks. Obviously, from turn 5 onwards, so round 5, round 6, they gain all of these keywords. Stag Knights. Kurt, what are we saying about Stag Knights?
So last time we spoke about Stag Knights and how they have this kind of ramping up ability, right? And so they can get really powerful in the end game, but it takes them a little bit of time to get going. It takes them a little bit of time to get there. And defensively, resilience is really nice. 5+ morale is really nice. But that 4+ armor can be a little bit of a weakness, and resilience, while it can kind of cover for that, it can only cover for it for 1 attack. So any unit that has sundering, or if your opponent has 2 units that have sundering, if they can double tap this unit, they can burn it down rather quickly. So you have to be mindful not to throw them away too early, but you also have to make sure you get them involved, because if they don't do anything early, then they're not carrying their weight because it's a 7-point unit. And then their abilities, again, don't start to come on until later in the game. And so that's always sort of been an issue with them. But you can mitigate that with certain attachments. And I think Stannis Loyalty has some more appealing attachments that can help these guys a little bit better than the Renly's loyalty can.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, okay. So what sort of commanders do you think play well with these guys from the Stannis side?
I think there's potential with these guys with the Davos commander. He can ignore the attachment limits, and he can give them outflank and pathfinder, so they can ignore things like stakes or bogs, and sort of use this unit as like a really dangerous unit in a position where your opponent doesn't want them to be, and hopefully get them in a position where you can threaten your opponent in multiple ways, but they can't necessarily concentrate on this unit with 2 or more units, right? Because that's the issue you want to avoid with that resilience. You want to keep them in a position where your opponent can't hit them more than one time around. Another option for commanders that I think could have some value for them. You could always stick Axel Florent in them. That he would give them the R'hllor affiliation. So you could take a non-R'hllor unit and kind of give it the benefits of being R'hllor. Intimidating Presence is a really powerful ability. And he also brings Stalwart, so he could make that strong morale value of 5 and even stronger morale value of 3, which is the best you can get in the game. So
yeah,
that's another option.
Awesome. I always loved playing Axel Florent. We'll get into when we get into the commanders, but yeah, I used to love playing Axel Florent when he did that massive panic bomb damage. We used to ping it back on people. That was crazy good. Anyway, yep, sweet. Stag Knights, awesome. Next up, we have Champions of the Stag. An 8-point unit again. This time they're movement 4. They have the Champion's Wrath attack ability, so 6/4 attack profile, hitting on 3+. They have a 2+ armor save and a 6+ morale. They have the cavalry rule that we've gone over previously, so I'm not going to read it again. The Champion's Wrath attack ability, so they have critical blow innately, so they just have it all the time. Not innately. Innately suggests that you can't get rid of it. Sorry. So critical blow, basic, so they get on their attack profile. Enemies successfully charged become weakened, so that's a token generation. And if this unit begin the turn engaged with the defender, before rolling attack dice, the defender becomes vulnerable. Again, Kurt, we spoke about this last time. On paper, they look quite nice. Obviously, the only unit in the game that's 2+ armor save outside of special game mechanics. And we have to sort of take on board the fact that these guys have access to Stannis Kingdom on the Wall. How the Champions of the Stag play into a Stannis loyalty and with that commander?
So once again, I can't recommend this unit to players. Same as I said on the Renly side. With Renly, they used to have a couple decent commander options between Courtney Penrose and Eldon Estermont, because Courtney Penrose had issue command, so you could get extra attacks with them, and Eldon Estermont had battle endurance, so you could kind of give them a ramping up kind of ability that's similar to what Stag Knights have. On Stannis' side, your options really were the great commanders for this unit were Stannis the Rightful Heir, because he could give them tactical approach, and that could help boost their damage in a way that you have an admittedly slow unit, but both offensively and defensively just kind of like juggernaut. However, tactical approach was nerfed, and now you have only it only produces 1 wound for token spent. And these guys produce their own tokens, so it used to be this lovely marriage that now I find woefully insufficient. Because I think the game itself argues that a token is worth more than a wound. I think a token is worth 2 or more wounds. And I think nowhere is that made more apparent than Euron Greyjoy attachment in the Greyjoy faction. He has the option to suffer a wound to give a token. through strange relics. So why, if he's willing to give up a wound to put out a token, why would I expend a token only to give one wound?
Yeah.
So the math just, it isn't there anymore on tactical approach on the copy that would be applied to this unit.
Yeah.
So that combination no longer really works in my mind. And then the other natural place to look would be, what about your mounted commander, Stannis 3, King at the Wall? And Stannis 3, he's got loads of issues too of his own. His cards are weak. His attachment is weak. And if you combo a weak attachment with weak cards with a weak unit, where's the upside? Yes, the 2-up armor is really good in terms of armor saves. It's the best you can get in the game. Only Iron Makers can equal that. But you're kind of undercut by that 6 morale value. And we've seen a rise in abilities and tools to bypass your armor saves through dealing wounds directly or automatically. Gregor is still an incredibly popular choice. Sir Robert Strong has seen a decrease in points from 3 to 2, and he deals 2 wounds automatically. Things like Pyromancer still exist, and units with access to sundering more powerful than normal sundering exist via Silenced Men and Greyjoys or Umber Great Axes and Starks. Dragons are still out there. Giants are still out there. There are ways to get around that armor save. So this unit just isn't the defensive wall that they used to be. And offensively, they're just woefully insufficient for 8 points. I can't recommend you put them in your list on a Stannis side any more than I could on the Renly side.
So these guys have got access to, obviously, an in-house attachment in the Dragonstone Noble attachment, which we're going to go over still later on. Does that give them any more value at all?
It helps their mobility a little bit, because that's another great weakness of theirs. They're only speed 4. So giving them access to that Sentinel that the Dragonstone Noble attachment can give, that helps their mobility a little bit. So that's another 4-inch maneuver. But now you just have an even more expensive unit, unless you're getting that point for free, that's weak offensively, that isn't quite as powerful defensively as it once was. Still is slow, a little bit more maneuverable than before. But what problem is it solving for you? What goals is it helping you accomplish? And I just don't see it helping you in a way or to an extent that other options on your roster could. I think you have better tools available to you elsewhere. And I think you're making a mistake if you pay the hefty price to get these guys on the table.
But if a new players are getting into the game, these are great miniatures. So, I mean, so often we see units peak and trough with seasons and patches. So grab them, paint them up, give them a run. Prove us wrong, and hopefully when that patch comes out, they'll get their attack dice back or get a tweak to make them the absolute juggernauts they used to be back in the day.
There's always the rule of cool, right? And whatever stats might be today, they could be different tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly right. Gun Company Swordsman showed us that a unit may be rubbish at one point, but it only takes one very slight patch to make them sell out of every store in the entire world in 5 minutes. Cool. Okay, well, that is the last of the faction neutral units. We're going to get into the Stannis side stuff now. So first up are the Rhllor Faithful. So before I get into reading this card, I don't know if you all want to go and get a drink, because there's quite a lot of text in this card. So they're a 6-point unit. They have a 6-inch move, which is really nice, really fast for a Baratheon unit. They have a 4+ to hit profile on a 7/6/4 Sword of the Faith. They have a 5+ armor save and a 4+ morale. So really nice morale. Very edgy armor save. Then they have the Heart of Fire ability. So this is their faith ability. This unit begins the game with 1 faith token. Each time it passes a morale test, it gains 1 faith token. Faith tokens may be expended to do the following. When this unit performs a melee attack before rolling attack dice, this attack gains +1 to hit and vicious. After this unit completes a melee attack, this unit restores 1 wound +1 wound for each of the defender's destroyed ranks. And when this unit performs a charge action before resolving the action, this unit may reroll any charge distance dice, and any enemies they successfully charge become panicked. It's a lot of text. These were one of the first Rhllor units that we see released for Stannis loyalty. How do you feel about the Rhllor faithful?
I think they're a phenomenal unit. They have a lot of flexibility with their faith token in how you want to expend it, and they couple really great with a lot of different attachments. You have so many different options. I don't think you could go wrong with a Stag Knight Noble, who would give you access to Iron Resolve to boost that morale even further and go down fighting, because their armor isn't that great, so they're likely to lose a rank when attacked, and so you can get some value out of that go down fighting. Red Priestesses, another great option for this unit. You take 1 wound, you get +1 to hit, and you can give out either a panicked or a vulnerable token. That way these guys hit on 3s instead of 4s. And they could expend their Heart of Fire token to get another +1 to hit on 2s, and gain vicious. So you could hit on 2s, give out a panic token, and have vicious all of a sudden.
Yeah.
There are different loyalty attachments that also have, I think, value in this unit. Andrew Estermont attachment could see some play here. He brings insight and that true conviction. So you're getting those rerolls. You get vicious. You make sure you're still your highest attack dice. And there are a lot of neutral attachments that you could also feel okay putting in here. I've always thought that the Bolton attachments, either Bolton Flayer or the Dreadfort Captain, both have value in this unit. If your opponent fails panic tests, you can shoot into combat with these guys engaged to trigger additional panic tests. And the big dog in the room himself, Ramsay Snow with Reek, fits really well with this unit. He gives them fueled by slaughter, plus they can restore 1 wound +1 wound for each of the defender's destroyed ranks from their Heart of Fire ability. So that can really help this unit heal back up and keep them in the game, despite that 5-up armor save that could otherwise be considered like a big weakness. And just having access to a 6-speed unit is really, I don't think you see that anywhere else in Stannis loyalty. So these guys they're a phenomenal option for 6 points. And I don't think you're locked into only using them in a Rhllor panic game list. I think you could take them in like a non-faith list and still feel pretty happy with them.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a massively glowing review, man. I'd love to hear the positivity in this. So, for you, are they they're an aggressive unit then, by the sounds of it, or not used for holding objectives, literally going after some damage dealing, right?
Yeah, they're certainly an aggressive unit, but they're also, in a weird way, a resilient unit. They're not like a defensive wall, but they have the ability to get back up after being punched because they have that access to that healing.
That's awesome. That sounds like a really good unit. And for newer players looking to invest into the Stannis Old Loyalty, sounds like it's a bit of a must pick up for them, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, who doesn't love swords that are on fire, right?
Yeah, yeah. Dothraki, apparently, if the TV shows go by anything. And also they come with the Red Priestess attachment as well, which we're going to go over in a bit. But she's had a massive glow up in this season 6 update. Cool. Okay, so one Rhllor unit to the next. Rhllor Lightbringers. So these are the Stannis unit, long range unit that you alluded to earlier on. They're 6 points. They have movement of fire. They have a long range fire arrow attack ability. So a 7/6/4 attack profile, hitting on a 3+. They have the daggers melee attack, which is 5/4/3, hitting on a 5+. They have a 4+ armor save and a 6+ morale. And the fire arrow attack ability comes with vicious. And if the defender fails their panic test, target one other enemy unit in short range of that unit. They suffer one panic test with a -2 to their roll. So then it, as you imagine, that then fires off another vicious panic test into another unit in short range. My only beef for this unit is the fact that they've got a 4+ armor save when they're clearly wearing more armor than any other unit in the game. But as far as long range units go, I mean, I think these are a pretty decent pick, right?
Yeah, I think this is arguably the best unit available to the faction right now. It's a long range unit, which is great to have. 5 movement speed is always good, and while I think something like Sundering is more powerful on a ranged unit than Vicious is, Vicious isn't bad to have, right? And it has that ability to bounce and cause more panic tests if the first one is failed. So against low morale opponents, this unit can be devastating. Now, in the current landscape of the game, I do think people value morale very highly, and so your opponents will tend to bring a lot of high morale units to minimize the effectiveness of these bouncing panic tests. But I just consider that kind of like icing on top of the cake, right? This unit's already so good at what it does. That 4+ armor value allows this unit to trade with opposing ranged units extremely well. And then I think the big elephant in the room is the fact that we've just had all these attachments being able to be added with the change, and the fact that True Conviction got changed. So yeah. True Conviction works on melee or ranged attacks, and it gives you rerolls when you're attacking someone that has more ranks than you, but now also someone has the same amount of ranks as you. So these guys have gone from one of the best archers in the game to copying an ability, essentially, of one of the other best archers in the game in Skyreach Bowman to get those rerolls now. So I think that's just elevated them a step further. If you're running Stannis loyalty, you want to include one of these in your army. You might want to include 2 of these in your army. And who doesn't love fire arrows, right?
Exactly, mate. Again, the miniatures look great because the miniatures have actually got the flaming arrows on them. There's nothing more terrifying than playing Feast for Crows against a couple of units of these on the tabletop, because you know you're going to stand on that objective to get that objective and claim the victory points. And you know for a fact that the Rhllor Lightbringers are going to be standing dead opposite, firing flaming vicious arrows into you, so you're suffering a -3 to your morale test with the potential of bouncing around. It's a sad time to be playing against Stannis Lightbringers when you're playing Feast for Crows.
If you want to be really cheeky, you can include some Bolt and Flare attachments in your army, and they have the order Spread Fear. So when an enemy that's engaged, so you have to shoot into like an engagement, suffers when they fail a panic test, you can then target another enemy in long range and make them suffer a panic test with -1 to their roll for each remaining rank in your unit, and on top of that, suffer an additional wound. So your Lightbringers could potentially trigger 3 panic tests. Now, playing into panic so heavily, I've always found to be a very risky proposition. I don't think it has consistent results. It's very, very much a casino game, but just being able to do that, knowing that that's a possibility, I think is really fun.
Yeah. It's one of those moments in the game, I guess, when everything aligns. You're like, this is going to go so well, and just everything just explodes and dies. Against free folk, especially, I imagine that's going to be a free folk or Greyjoys is going to be especially terrifying. Okay, cool. So another good review there for a range unit, and again, miniatures, awesome. Grab them, like them, love them. You'll enjoy playing them. Next up, we have the Kingsmen. So they're a 7-point unit. They have a 5-inch move. They have the King's Blade attack profile, which hits on the 3+ at 765. They have the 4+ armor save and a 5+ morale, and they have to the last. So this is innate ability, so they cannot be taken away from them by any abilities or cards or anything like that. So you place 2 wounds, place 2 heart tokens in this unit at the start of the game. Each time this unit will be destroyed, remove 1 heart token from this card. It makes 1 morale test. On a success, this unit is not destroyed, but remains in play with 1 wound. And the King's Blade attack profile has Sundering and comes with the additional rule of, while your opponent does not control crowns, this attack gains critical blow and may re-roll any attack dice. Now, we're saying it pretty much with every single unit, and I think we're completely fair to say it with every single unit. But the Kingsmen sculpts are absolutely incredible. I've painted a unit of them. I love painting them. I'm going to paint another unit that I'll probably never use, but I want to paint them again. They're that good. But are they as good on the tabletop?
Yes. I would say if Lightbringers aren't the best available unit to Stannis loyalty, then Kingsmen are, right? They're fighting 1A, 1B, one of them. And we've praised, like you said, how great Rose Knights look. We've praised the Halberdiers, and the Crownland Scouts. I think these guys take the cake as the best looking models in the game.
Agree.
If I can say that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, mate. I totally agree.
And they're a phenomenal unit. Now, we've looked at the Stag Knights earlier, which are another really, really solid unit. And these Kingsmen, I feel like you're comparing them to Stag Knights and Queensmen, and you're kind of deciding like what to do with these units. And I'd say the Kingsmen just tip a little bit more into that role of being an offensive unit. If you can prevent your opponent from taking the crown zone, then this unit really, really shines. You do have to get them engaged, and that 5-up movement speed and access to things like tactical reposition from your Crownland Scouts can help you do that. I think they are arguably one of the best 7-point infantry units in the game right now. I think they compete up there with Stag Knights, like we mentioned earlier, with Rose Knights, Silenced Men and Iron Makers from Greyjoys, and the Casterly Rock Honor Guard from Lannisters. I think might have the claim to best 7-pointer in the game, but I think these guys are right up there with them. I think if you include a unit of Kingsmen in your army, I think you are making a good choice. I don't think there's I struggle to think of when it might be a mistake to include one of these. Maybe if you're playing a game mode where you really need to be defensive, there are other options that you could say are better suited to those roles. But like as an elite unit, 7-point unit that you're paying 7 points for, that you need to be offensive and attacking, I think these guys are excellent.
That's awesome, man. It's awesome. This is turning into one of my favourite faction overviews already. There's so much positivity. I'm loving it. So with Kingsmen, so they used to have obvious synergy with Andrew Estamont. Do they still have that? It feels like they're slightly edging away from having that synergy with him now.
Yeah, I'd say the only thing Andrew Estamont really gives them is the automatic 6 charge card.
Yeah.
I think Andrew Estamont needs a full rework as a commander. And there are better options for Kingsmen. You could go with either of the Stannis' rightful heir or One True King. You could go with Axel Florent, he could give them the R'hllor affiliation and intimidating presence and stalwart. And you could also go with, and I think low key, the most fun is to go with Davos. Davos can take an additional attachment. He can give these guys outflank and ignore, stakes and bogs, and you can really have some fun with these guys. Go to town, have fun with them.
Awesome. And yeah, I agree. I think there's some tweaking that needs to be done to Andrew Esmond, because Andrew is obviously the first of the King's Men. He used to have great synergy with his unit as an attachment. Would love to see that put back in place again. So maybe a slight tweak and some of his rules to make him really, really stand out as a decent attachment for these guys. Awesome. Next up, so if King's Men are our offensive 7-point unit, Queen's Men are our defensive 7-point unit. So the R'hllor, the R'hllor Queen's Men, 7 points, movement of 4, so extremely slow unit. They have the longsword attack ability, so 3+ to hit, 765. They have a 3+ armor save and a 5+ morale. They come with the order hold the line. So when this unit activates, target one enemy engaged with this unit. It suffers 2 hits plus 1 hit for each of this unit's remaining ranks. They come with To the Last, which we explained in the King's Men, exactly the same, so I'm not going to read it again. And they come with a Queen's Blade. So while your opponent does not control crowns, opponents cannot expend vulnerable and panic tokens on this unit. This is an extremely solid defensive unit. Yeah, did you want to talk us through the R'hllor Queen's Men?
Yeah, the R'hllor Queen's Men. So I mentioned earlier how Kingsmen are like the offensive unit. Stag Knights are kind of like the middle ground unit, and Queensmen lean to be that defensive unit. So you have 3 different 7-point infantry options. You have the jack of all trades kind of Stag Knights, and then you kind of have like the 2 specialist units, Kingsmen offensively and Queensmen defensively. So I think it's great to have those options, and I think all 3 units are really solid units. The Queensmen, they're really tough to move. Especially when you start to consider attachments that you can include in them. For instance, Brian Faring, the King's Squire for Stannis, he can give them protection of the crown. So while you control the crown, every time they're attacked, they can re-roll their defense dice, and opponents can't spend vulnerable on them. Now, there's a little bit of overlap between the Queen's Blade there, but still defensive re-rolls can push this unit from being a immovable object to I don't know what vibranium, like
power armor.
The hold the line. I really like the order hold the line, but I do find a little tricky to get it to trigger. A lot of skilled opponents are not going to sit engaged with you, so I put a little less stock into that ability. Although I really like that ability. It's hard to get value out of it. But in terms of the sitting and holding an objective, this unit's phenomenal. You have to decide if you want to make the investment of 7 points as opposed to just running with like Wardens, like we mentioned earlier, or Dragonstone Noble. I used to really love these guys with Stannis Rightful Heir, because Stannis Rightful Heir has access to that tactical approach card. So you could have almost an infantry version of old Champions of the Stag, where it's like defensively really tough to get rid of, and offensively able to hit hard enough because of that tactical approach. Now, Stannis Rightful Heir has taken a little bit of a step back in my book, but I still like this unit coupled with him. I still think this unit can go toe-to-toe with most other units in the game to really fight over that central objective point. And I think if you're envisioning and you have a plan to use this unit and you know what you're going to do with them, I think they're a solid choice.
Yeah. Do you know what I really like about this Stannis Loyalty Baratheon is, for newer players, there's an age-old argument that goes that 7-point units, 7-point infantry units are really tough to go the line because of cavalry options and stuff. So for 7-point infantry, they have to be extremely good. For me, the Queen's Men, the King's Men, and almost, very, very almost, the Stag Knights are definitely usable 7-point infantry units. I think they're really, really good. I think that they serve different roles, but I definitely think they're on par with almost on par with where the Golden Company swords were at 7 points when they were a little bit broken. I think it's nice to see good 7-point infantry units.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And also they're really good in Brotherhood banners, but that's not what we're talking about. Taking your best units and not even apologising for it. Next up, we have the only solo unit in the entire of House Baratheon at the moment, with the Dragonstone Noble. So Dragonstone Noble up on the screen now. We're going to see him later as attachment, but this is the unit. So it's 4 points. He has a movement of 4. He has the Mastercrafted Warhammer, which is 3 dice hitting on 3s. He has a 2+ armor save and a 3+ morale, so an extremely powerful defensive profile there. He comes with order, Noble's Bolster. So when a friendly combat unit in long range will take condition token, it does not gain that token. So he's basically got a little version of Stag's Wit that he carries around with him. And he has Solo Rider. So this unit has 3 wounds. At the start of this unit's activation, it may perform 1 maneuver or retreat action. I believe at the point of this is being released, this video is being released, this is the first time we've seen the Solo Rider ability. Other units have it in the game. This is the first time we see it. The difference is basically the cavalry rule. The difference being that you can perform a retreat action rather than a maneuver action when you activate. So you can literally come out of combat. So there's a little bit of defensive tech there for him. And he comes with a Mastercraft Warhammer, which may always reroll attack dice. And if the defender rolls a 1 on any defense dice after this attack is completed, they become weakened. So this is a complete rework of the Dragonstone Noble from the last edition. I quite like this edition. It's become more of a support piece. What are your feelings on the 4-point Dragonstone Noble?
I think it's phenomenal solo. And as you mentioned, its role is as a support piece, that Noble's bolster to play into the token game and prevent your opponent from putting tokens on one of your units in long range. It's really solid. It's only 4 points, and I think as a support piece, it's so much better than what it used to be, being kind of like a quasi weaker version of like Shaggy Dog, where it was kind of like, yeah, take some wounds and then throw it like a cruise missile at your opponent. Like, I was not a big fan of the old Dragonstone Noble, and I think this new version that kind of fills as a support utility role is so much better and really a really nice addition to the army.
Are you taking one of these in every army, or is it specific to certain builds?
I would say you have to plan for them to have a spot. They are a little like the armor and the morale values are amazing, but they still have a little bit of vulnerability because they're only 3 wounds. So you still have to be a little bit careful with these guys and take that into consideration when you're including them in your army. So you probably don't want to throw them right up front. You probably want them hovering maybe just behind your combat line, and in a position where they can support, or in a position where they can sit on an objective, right? Because then they're only 4 points of your army invested sitting on that objective, as opposed to, let's say, a 7-point unit just sitting on an objective, not getting involved in combat. It's a smaller point sink, right?
Yeah. And I think as well that Noble's bolster being long range gives it the ability to be able to sit on objectives and still influence the game as well. If that had been short range, they're basically taking out the game right being on objective, but long range actually gives them a bit more utility.
Yeah, I think it's really important that it's long range. I think when you see support units that only have short range abilities, I think that really hampers them. Like Gold Cloaks in the Lannisters come to mind. If they just had their abilities to be long range, I think they'd be so much better as a support utility unit. And luckily for the Dragonstone Noble, he has that. One thing to keep in mind is there is a limitation on your Dragonstone Nobles. You're only allowed to have 2 in your army, and that applies both to the solo version and the attachment version. So if you have an attachment in some Crownland Scouts elsewhere, then you can only have 1 solo. You can't have 2.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, that's great. So that is it for units for Stannis Loyalty Baratheons. I mean, I'm actually, I feel a little bit buzzy about it. I might have to go and paint some Baratheons in a minute. Next up, we have the attachment. So we're going to launch again as we did before with the non-loyalty specific attachments. So we have the Master Warden and the Stag Knight Noble on screen, both at 1 point. So the Master Warden has the order hold the line. We've already seen this with the Queen's Men, but because it's a different segment, I will quickly reread that for people. So when this unit activates, they target 1 enemy engaged with this unit. It suffers 2 hits plus 1 hit for each of this unit's remaining ranks. And the Stag Knight Noble's got go down fighting. Each time a rank in this unit is destroyed, 1 enemy they are engaged with suffers 1 wound. And Iron Resolve. This unit gains +1 to panic test rolls and suffers -1 wound from failing panic test. So we've already gone over these for Renly, but do they offer something different perhaps to Stannis? You mentioned the Stag Knight Noble for one of the units a moment ago, but yeah, what's your thoughts on these non-loyalty attachments?
So I think Master Warden fulfills largely the same role for Stannis that it does for Renly. I think early on in your play experience, you could have a lot of fun with them. I think at the higher level, it's difficult to get them to work. It's difficult to have situations where you can activate while engaged against higher level play. Stag Knight Noble, I feel like, gives you a lot more value that translates to multiple levels of play, both high and low. And like I pointed out earlier, I think they have a lovely marriage with the Rhllor faithful.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, even when these guys were a 2-point attachment, when they had the third ability as well, they were really good in Rhllor faithful. So that's nice. They keep that synergy there with them.
Yeah, what they used to have, was it stubborn tenacity?
Yeah. So when you've so there was that combination of Axel Florence card that done the auto wounds back if they passed the morale test, plus he would do additional wound on it. And then obviously a station Shireen that we'll go over later. It was a bad time to be standing next to them failing morale tests.
Yes.
But yeah, for 1 point, I think these are 2 great abilities. 1 point, hold the line. I totally agree. I think it's an amazing ability. I love when this sort of came out. It just felt like it was a Baratheon rule, right? Because it's basically them locking shields and punching forward with the shields, and then you activate afterwards. So I love it. But as you say, at the higher end of the top tables, people are just going to play around it and not allow you to play it. And for 1 point, you might as well just invest an additional point and take the Queen's Men and take a unit that won't die. Okay, cool. So that's the only non-loyalty specific attachments. First up, we have the Red Priestess and the Dragonstone Noble. So the Red Priestess has both 1 point. Sorry. Red Priestess has Divine Sacrifices, so it's a melee attack only ability. Each time this unit performs a melee attack, before rolling attack dice, it may suffer 1 wound. If it does, this attack gains +1 to hit, and the defender becomes panicked or vulnerable. An amazing ability. And the Dragonstone Noble is a cavalry attachment and has the order Sentinel. So after another friendly unit in long range is attacked, this unit performs 1 charge or maneuver action. If charging, it must target the attacker. Well, I'll quickly go over the loyalty thing. So obviously these are both loyalty Stannis Baratheon. So your army may never include units or attachments with different loyalties. So all this is just doing is reinforcing the fact you can't take Renly loyalty units and put Stannis loyalty attachments in them, and vice versa. And the bottom of the Dragonstone Noble card, you can see what you spoke about a moment ago, which is your army may only include up to 2 Dragonstone Nobles of either type. I mean, I can gush about the Red Priestess, but I'll let you crack on.
Yeah, she's phenomenal, right?
So
if you were gonna have any complaint, it would be that the old version had either panic or a morale test, which would synergize with your Rhllor faithful. but the new version also works great with Rhllor Faithful. So I can't complain, and she's just a phenomenal value for 1 point. Plays into that Rhllor theme of having like a little bit of a sacrifice to gain something back. But I think this is one of the times in the game where they really nailed it to make it so that what you're gaining back is actually worth that cost. I think, unfortunately, sometimes in the game, there will be mechanics where you have a downside to get some power, but that power that you're getting is the same or less than power other people are getting without a downside. I think this is one of the cases where they've actually done a really great job to make that gain, a significant gain, worth that downside, right? Worth paying that price of that one wound. She can go great, like we said, in the Rhllor Faithful. I think you could throw her in Sentinels, Halberdiers, just about any melee infantry unit she could provide value to. Kingsmen, Queensmen, Stag Knights. Why not?
Yeah. Kingsman hitting on 2 is a critical blow. I'll take that with rerolls.
Yeah. Go for 6s. Swing for the fences.
Yeah. I think obviously the only downside is now she can't go on range units, but I totally get why she can't, because if you add Royal Lightbringers hitting on 2s with throw that paint vulnerable, I mean, it'd be a bad time to be opposed to Stannis Baratheon, right?
Yeah, and I suppose she did used to give out 2 tokens. Now it's just 1, but you still have that flexibility to choose which one. So I like that.
Yeah. I'm really interested in trying her in Sentinels. You mentioned that. I think she patches up some of their greatest weaknesses. I think getting Sentinels hitting on 3s, putting out one of them tokens. I'm definitely going to give it a try. I think I'm definitely going to give it a try. I like it. And the Dragonstone Noble.
So this is one of those situations where the loyalty restriction really hampers things. We have a cavalry attachment on Stannis' side with no real special Stannis cavalry, and then we have special cavalry on Renly's side, but no cavalry attachments on Renly's side. I think the Dragonstone Noble would be phenomenal in a unit of Riders of Highgarden, but unfortunately you cannot make that combination. And I just don't see real great options for the Dragonstone Noble attachment on Stannis' side loyalty. I've gone to length at Champions of the Stag. I won't continue harping on that. We've talked about the Crownland Scouts, which are a phenomenal support unit, but they're really not a big combat unit. So the Sentinel kind of loses some value there. You could throw him into like neutral cavalry, like on like a Hedge Knights. I think he could be useful there. But then you're having to say, you have to do the, check with yourself. Is it better to have this as an attachment, or is it better to have them as a solo? And I think right now the solo just sort of edges out the attachment as it is currently. But it is nice to have the option to have a cavalry attachment so that you can include cavalry in your army and still put an attachment in there to take advantage of those free attachment points.
Yeah, that's one of the big downsides of list building with the new season 6, right? Is that there's lots. It leaves people without in faction cavalry attachments really restricted about what they can sort of add into their list now. So it's quite nice you can do that. It's just a shame there's nothing that really stands out as being something incredible to use them in. Okay.
Yeah, well, not all of us can be Targaryens, right?
Targaryens, what have they got?
Some of the best cavalry in the game, with some of the best cavalry attachments in the game. Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah. Wait, the whole army can't become weakened, but we're not here to just rag on them. But I agree.
Fair enough.
Cool. Yeah, sweet. Next up, so that's it for unnamed attachments. We're going to go into the named characters now. We start off with Clan Seaworth. So we have Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight. We have Devan Seaworth, the King's Squire, and Dale Seaworth, captain of the Wrath. So these are all 1 point attachments. So Davos Seaworth, Onion Knight comes with the order supply aid. Start with friendly turn. This unit suffers up to 3 wounds. Restore 1 plus that many wounds to one other friendly unit in long range. So a little bit of a healing battery there for other units. And he comes with True Conviction. I'll do this once. This is on a multiple of the attachments now, but I'm not going to read it every single time. So listen up on this one. If this unit is a Baratheon unit, each time it attacks an enemy with the same or more remaining ranks, it may re-roll any attack dice. This works on ranged and melee. This is a new change of Season 6. It is quite big, I believe. We're going to get into it as we go in a minute. Devon Seaworth, King Squire, Order, Reckless Heroism. We did hear you mention this a few times when you was talking about Loris, so I'm sure you're going to mention that in a minute. When this unit performs the charge action, before resolving the action, this unit suffers D3 wounds, but counts as rolling 6 on all charge distance dice, and it comes with True Conviction, as previously mentioned. Also, if your army contains Stannis Baratheon, that's any Stannis Baratheon, so that you have 3 different options there for Stannis, you can reduce the cost of Devan by 1 point. So you can have him for free on top of your 4 points of attachments you get now. If you take him in an army, including Stannis, a little bit of a fluff choice there. I quite like that. And Davos Seaworth, who comes with Davos's vassal. So this model counts as Davos Seaworth for all abilities and effects, and counter strike. Each time this unit is attacked with a melee attack, for each miss, the attacker suffers 1 hit. And the Davos's vassal only comes into play when we're running Davos Commander. So we're going to get into that a little bit when we touch on Davos Commander. But just as a bit of, just for newer players, because I've seen this conversation coming up in the forums and on Facebook again, Davos's vassal does not mean that you copy Davos's card. It just means that you count as Davos Seaworth for all of the abilities and effects. So things like his cards that give you extra bits if it counts as Davos, that is when Dell comes into it. He doesn't just copy over Davos's abilities. That's not what that means. But yeah, that's just for newer players. Older players will obviously be well aware of that. So these 3, so the Seaworth family, are they worth being adopted by? Are they good people?
2 out of 3 are. I think Davos has long been a phenomenal attachment, and you've really had to sort of make this decision. Are you going to run the attachment version of Davos, or do you want to run the NCU version of Davos? Because the NCU version is also phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And now we've had Davos. He's one of the few, I think the only one on Stannis' side at least, that can ignore attachment restrictions, which is really big in this new update. So I think even Commander Davos is another great option. So you really have to decide, is this going to be worth it for me? And I think a lot of the times he still could be worth it, right? Supply aid's a phenomenal ability, and True Conviction is great now. I think speaking on True Conviction, I think if we were going to talk about the patch, the single greatest gain Stannis loyalty side got was the change to True Conviction. I think in the past it was really a weak kind of nothing burger ability that was hard to get to work. And now I think it's become truly a quality ability. And we see it across so many different Stannis loyalty attachments. It's nice to have this ability start to shine, right? So True Conviction, solid now. Supply aid, solid. Devon Seaworth, True Conviction, solid. And Reckless Heroism, solid. You can try to include him in a Stannis list, and then you can have 5 free attachment points essentially, because Devan drops a point from 1 to 0. I think options for Devan, I think he's always been great in R'hllor Faithful, but you could stick him in Baratheon Sentinels or Baratheon Halberdiers or Kingsmen even if you want. He adds some reach to otherwise a pretty slow Baratheon army, so he's always had sort of that value. Dale Seaworth, unfortunately, might be one of the worst attachments in the game. I think they really put a lot of stock into the vassal ability. It is a heart ability, so it can't be turned off. But in the case of Dale, he's counting as Davos, and that only impacts one single Davos card, and that's Flea Bottom Tricks.
Yeah.
None of the other Davos cards give a benefit if it's Davos. No, Parlay does. Okay, so two out of four. 2 out of 4. So it's yeah, I don't think Counter-Strike is very good because the way the game is right now, we've just seen sustained assault be improved. People can get rerolls from the charge, so there's a lot of access to rerolls and people running units that hit on good to hit values. So I think Counter-Strike kind of struggles to get any value. And then Davos's Vassal, we're talking about 2 cards, and I don't think the benefit is necessarily that great. So I would skip Dale Seaworth, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I mean, it's great. Two of the 3 attachments you've been really positive about. So I mean, that I'll take that. That's 2 out of 3. You know, every family, every family's got a black sheep, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Do you think he ramps up? Does he ramp up in selectability if you're running Davos Command? Obviously, you're getting your 3 attachment points now. Or do you just think there's better attachments to give you more value, even if you are running Davos Commander?
Yeah, I think there's better options.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, that's good. Nice. So next up, we have Andrew Estamont, True Loyalist, and Brian Farin, King Squire. So we have the order. So on Andrew Estamont, both 1 point. We have the order insight on Andrew. So when his unit's performing a melee attack before rolling attack dice, this attack gains vicious and rolls its highest attack die value. And he has true conviction. We've already gone over it. We don't need to go over it again. Then Brian Farin has got the same true conviction. Then he also has protection of the crown. So while you control crowns, each time this unit is attacked, it may reroll any defense dice, and opponents cannot expend vulnerable tokens on this unit. One clearly an offensive attachment, one clearly a defensive attachment. Odd that the King Squire Brian Farin doesn't come with the ability to reduce points if he's taken with Stannis, but I mean you can't have attachments everywhere, I guess, can you?
Yeah, it would have been nice if he'd gotten that also, because he is Stannis' Squire. I think both of these are solid. Andrew Estamont, I think, used to be a rather poor attachment. I'm not big on Insight as an order. I think I would rather just have Vicious, because then you could get multiple uses out of it around, whereas Insight's an order, so you burn it once, you're done. But True Conviction is improved, so therefore Andrew Estamont has improved. Brian Faring, solid choice. He has that protection of the crown. You can get those rerolls to your defense dice, and your opponent can't expend vulnerables on you. So he can take a defensive unit and make it just even sturdier, or he could take a rather fragile unit and make them kind of shore up that weakness. I think a great spot for Brian Faring is a unit of Lightbringers. I think if you're not running Davos attachment, he would be the next one I would pick to go into Lightbringers. Or if you are running Davos attachment, if you're running 2 Lightbringers, put Davos in one, put Brian Faring in the other.
Nice. Yeah. Makes them 2 very hard units to get rid of. I like it. Cool. Okay. Next up, we have Axel Florent, Fanatical Devotee, and Justin Massey, Culling Follower. Axel Florent is a 1 point attachment, and Justin is 2 points. So Axel Florent, he has the innate ability Affiliation Rhllor. So this unit is a Rhllor unit. This comes into play when we look at Stannis, One True King, as a commander, and I think that's the only Rhllor commander, isn't it? Outside of him and Axel.
Axel is, yeah, but
nice. But if you run an Axel Florent attachment in an Axel commander list, you're cheating.
Yep. Can't duplicate him. Can't clone him. I think.
Go.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Now, so we got obviously the innate ability Zealous Fanaticism. This unit's melee attacks gain vicious and always roll their highest attack die value. This unit suffers 1 wound for each attack die roll of 1, and it comes with intimidating presence. Enemies engaged with this unit suffer -1 to morale test rolls and +1 for failing panic tests. So it gives us some nice abilities there for 1 point. And Justin Massey, we have the order battle plan. Start of any turn, discard 2 tactic cards to search your tactics deck for any 1 card and add it to your hand, shuffle your tactics deck. And the order threatens. So start with a friendly turn. Target 1 enemy in line of sight and long range. They become weakened. It's a nice little package for 2 points. Yeah, so talk us through these 2 guys.
I think Axel Florent is phenomenal. He used to be 2 points, now he's 1. And I kind of see him like a budget Ramsay Bolton. Intimidating Presence is just such a great ability. And Zealous Fanaticism is really not that bad either. It can't be turned off. It's got the hard ability. And you're getting vicious and your highest attack dice. So it's like Insight if Insight wasn't in order, right?
Yeah.
The only downside is if you roll a 1. But I think you're planning, if you're going to be including Axel, you probably want to put him on a unit that has rerolls available to it. Something like Kingsman comes to mind, or if you have your sustained assault card in your hand ready to go. So you can minimize the risk of those ones, and really push him as an offensive unit. He also gives the Rhllor affiliation, so he can take something that isn't Rhllor and give it those bonuses, which can be quite nice. So yeah, solid Axel. I think you have to really weigh your options and consider if you're going to have him or not, because he's a solid choice.
Does he? Do you think he suffers from not having a true conviction? Like, or do you think he's good enough to outweigh that?
Not having access to true conviction is a setback, because true conviction is really good now. But he's a little bit different. So there's different roles for different people and different abilities. So that intimidating presence plays into a panic game if you were leaning that direction, more so than like a true conviction would. So you have to kind of look at your list and what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And anytime you can change the amount of wounds taken. So intimidating presence, iron resolve, those 2 abilities are both phenomenal abilities, right? You can increase the wounds taken with intimidating presence. You can decrease the wounds taken with iron resolve. So he has intimidating presence. He's got value. Justin Massey. I used to really like Justin Massey. I took him famously in my LVO list, where I won LVO, battle plan, and threaten. Threatens a weakened token. It plays into the token game that commanders like Stannis Rightful Heir like to play. And battle plan, you can get rid of 2 cards to go get a card you really need out of your deck. And that used to be phenomenal back when Tactical Approach used to be a phenomenal card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There have been some changes since 2023 that I think he is not the premier attachment he used to be. He comes in at 2 points. He's the only 2-point attachment for Stannis loyalty. And that's a hefty price tag for a battle plan that I don't know if you really want to use. And then threaten is nice, but it's 1 weakened token in a landscape where a lot of units might not be able to be weakened. There are other attachments in the game that give that battle plan, and a lot of them were 2 points. There used to be Ario Hota for the Martells. There used to be Samwell Tarly for the Night's Watch, Justin Massey for the Baratheons, and Tyrion Lannister for the Lannisters. Now, all of them were 2 points, except for Tyrion. Tyrion was 1 point, and that always felt really unfair to our other guys, right?
Yeah.
The changes come down the pipes where now Samuel Tarly and Ario Hota are also now 1 point like Tyrion is. And now Justin Massey is the only one. He's the odd one out. And it feels really unfair.
He was obviously being used too much then.
I guess. Yeah. So I don't really like Justin Massey now. He used to be great, but if I'm going to use Justin Massey, I'm going to go Justin Massey Commander. I'm not going to go Justin Massey Attachment.
Yeah. Yeah, that does seem really strange. Obviously, the designers feel that there's something that he can get that's more powerful than the others. But I mean, when you're looking at Lannisters, Martells, and Night's Watchers, the other 1 point battle plan, it's not like they've got rubbish decks. You know, they've got enough to be getting out. So maybe we'll see that tweaked in upcoming patches.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, it just seems like he's been left behind, doesn't it? It just feels like someone forgot to delete and put one.
Maybe they just forgot about him. Like, yeah.
Yeah. To be fair, Stannis did as well. Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, that's the end of the attachments, mate. So far, man, I think this is going brilliantly. Like, we've got some great units, we've got some great attachments. True Conviction as a change has been amazing. Before we head into the commanders, I just wanted to quickly ask you. I was making notes as we go along to try and get some stuff to sort of question you about as we go. But so True Conviction as an ability now, it feels like you've got the abilities or the options to put this in every single unit. I mean, do you find that you're playing games with True Conviction in every single unit?
So I haven't actually gotten that many games in yet since the update. I was in Europe for the Invitational and we played on the season 5 patch. And then I was vacationing there for like another week and a half, and my first game back I actually played Starks. So I haven't had the chance to really play that many Baratheon games yet, with Stannis side. But I could see that very well being the case, to have those rerolls just kind of across the board, which is really nice. I don't think it's necessary though, and that's why I see places for attachments like Axel who doesn't have it, because he can give you something else, and you have other ways to get him rerolls, like with your sustained assault that comes in your base tactics deck, or in like a Kingsman unit that can have their own rerolls. So I see the change to True Conviction being really, really solid, but I also see places where you can use other attachments. You're not required to use your True Conviction attachments, because there are some other things that you can do, and maybe you want to try doing some of those other things.
Yeah, it definitely feels like the Baratheons are getting into a good place with this patch, especially like I feel that Stannis is really seems to have come out quite nice in it. Okay, let's get into the commanders then. So again, same as before, man. We're going to go through the commander card. I'm going to quickly reference the cards as we go through, but we're not going to get too deep into them. But feel free to reference them when you're sort of talking about playstyles and stuff. And we're going to get you back in to do a whole tactics deck deep dive for every single tactic card that this faction has. So yeah, we're going to call this the Stannis half hour. So first commander, Stannis Baratheon, the rightful heir. This is the commander you get in the Baratheon starter set. You get Renly and Stannis. This is the Stannis version you get. The rightful heir. Order. Adaptive planning. Start of any turn. Target one combat unit in long range. Replace one condition token on that unit with any other condition token. Order. Mark target. Start a friendly turn. Target one enemy in line of sight and long range. They become vulnerable. And obviously loyalty Stannis Baratheon, because he is, of course, Stannis Baratheon. He comes with tactical approach, will of the one true king, and harsh conditions. Stannis Baratheon, the rightful heir. What's his play style? How is he good for new players?
So Stannis, rightful heir, he is the token king, right? He plays with condition tokens. He throws them out. He can throw them out via his attachment, or he has cards that use it, and all of his cards play around condition tokens, right? So in order to use harsh conditions, you have to expend condition tokens. In order to use tactical approach, you have to expend a condition token. He was my favorite commander for years. He is the commander I took win LVO. And I loved the way he played. I think there's a bit more nuance to his game to where he's not necessarily like the go-to beginner player commander, but I think a beginner player could do just fine playing as him. I think it was criminal what they did to his tactical approach card. I think it should be 2 wounds across the board for that token expenditure for both copies of the card.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And obviously, just for newer players, obviously, when we talk about him being, he's very much the condition turn king. Like even down to his commander card, like being able to start of his turn, chuck out a vulnerable, and then start with your opponent's turn as they're about to charge you, adapt to playing it into a weakened. I really like. He feels for me like he's a very nice commander for people that like thinking about the gameplay and the token stuff. I really like it, is what I'm saying. But yeah,
he flowed really nicely. He was very versatile, and his design worked. So he needs tokens to do his things. Will the Ultra King throws out the tokens. If you want some offensive punch, that's where tactical approach comes in. And then harsh conditions gave you a little bit of access to control elements of the game. So something that you'd usually suspect someone like Martells or Lannisters of having. So he was so versatile, and it all just flowed so nicely. There's a reason why he was my favorite commander.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect way of describing him. He did flow well. Okay, cool. Next up, we have the second version Stannis, the One True King. So he comes with the affiliation Rhllor. So this unit is a Rhllor unit, and this is quite important for his cards at least. Dauntless. Each time this unit passes a morale test, it restores 1 wound. It comes with Iron Resolve. This unit gains +1 to panic test rolls and suffers -1 wound from failing panic tests. And it comes with the tactic cards Azor Ahai in R'hllor's name and Test of Faith. Azor Ahai, obviously a Stannis card, not a Brotherhood card. Yeah, what are you saying about the One True King?
One True King is my new favorite commander because he hasn't gotten any of his cards cut off at the knees. Dauntless is a solid ability. Iron Resolve I spoke about earlier very warmingly. Azor Ahai to automatically pass a panic test can be really big against certain panic-heavy factions like Lannisters or Boltons. And then you have your Test of Faith ability, which has some really clever cases where it can get some great value. It gives you +1 to your armor. Now you do have to target a R'hllor unit with this card. So that is the something to keep in mind. But it induces a morale test on your unit, and if you succeed, you can cleanse all of your tokens off. So if you target Stannis One True King's unit, you can trigger that Dauntless to heal. You can get rid of tokens, and then you can also gain +1 armor. And if you throw that on something like your Lord Lightbringers, on a game mode like Honed and Ready, with a castle walls can shoot your units that are on the objective tokens on the sides, that Test of Faith will give you +1 armor, and it'll stay on. Normal attacks will knock the Test of Faith +1 armor off, but things that are not attacks that deal hits won't. So your Test of Faith will stay on to things like those wall shots. It'll stay on to things like Hold the Line, which just deal hits but aren't an actual attack. It'll stay on to things like Counterstrike. So there's some really clever ways to use that Test of Faith. I don't think it's overbearing because it does fall off, but it can be a nice way to boost up that defensive profile of one of your units.
Yeah, do you know what? I never even made that thing in my head, that connection in my head, that you could literally put it on Wardens and then sit on the objective Honed and Ready and have a 2+ armor save for the entire of the game. That's crazy. I don't know why I didn't pick up on that. That's crazy. Awesome. What would you say? How would you say that what sort of commander playstyle has he got? Would you think he's more control? Is it literally just bolstering panic?
I'd say he's a very combat focused commander. He's kind of like Jaime in a sense. You have Dauntless and Iron Resolve to help keep your unit alive. You have in R'hllor's Name to boost your attack. You have Azor Ahai to pass panic tests. So you could work that in conjunction with like Melisandre NCU, so that you're not suffering additional wounds, or if there's a particularly nasty, intimidating presence, hear me roar combination being thrown down on one of your units to not have your unit be blown up. He's like a very nice kind of all around kind of combat focused commander. And I think he performs better than his two counterparts do.
Okay.
Rightfully or looking at the wall. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get into it then, because obviously he's a good commander, but he's not the best Stannis. This is the best Stannis Baratheon. Stannis Baratheon, king at the wall. He comes with all the insight. So obviously this is the commander we keep referencing. This is the cavalry commander, the only cavalry commander available to House Baratheon on any loyalty at the moment. So Stannis Baratheon, king of the wall. He comes with the order insight. So when this unit is performing a melee attack before rolling attack dice, this attack gains vicious and rolls its highest attack die value. Stubborn tenacity. Each time this unit passes a panic test, one enemy that they are engaged with suffer 1 wound, and he comes with ride them down, muster, and on the double. Right, so Stannis Baratheon, what is his playstyle, and what are the small gems of positivity you can pull out of this for newer players?
He is another play style because you can run like a cavalry army, I guess. That there you go for new players. He's just dreadful, unfortunately. Which is really sad to say because you would really like to see him be a solid option, given that he does give that access to another style, and it's in this point in the books, this is where he wins his greatest victory against Mance Rayder at the wall. His attachment's kind of, like we've said, lackluster. Insight's not a great ability. Stubborn tenacity's okay, but I mean, even stubborn tenacity, you want high morale value, and they nerfed the morale on Champions of the Stag, and you don't have any other cavalry options that have higher than a 6.
Mm-hmm.
So then that stubborn tenacity loses appeal. The tactics cards, ride them down is just weaker objectively than Renly's overconfidence. So it's a neat card, but it's not that strong. On the double can give you +3 movement speed for your maneuver, but not for anything after your maneuver. So that's kind of underwhelming to then get punished with a vulnerable token. And then Muster is nice because it can give you kind of like a pseudo elusive escape where you can make a retreat and they can't pivot. It doesn't hand out a weaken token like elusive escape does, but it's still like nice. And if it's Stannis' unit itself, it has a heal. So if you could combo Muster with on the double together, then maybe you'd start cooking with a little bit of gas, right? But you can't because of the way the triggers work. So it's just underwhelming across the board. You have an underwhelming attachment, underwhelming tactics cards, and underwhelming units to put him in. So it's if he had something like Marshall, like Mounted Brynden Tully Commander has, that would be really nice. Or if he had a combat unit like Sworn Brotherhood Knights or Tully Cavaliers, or if Champions of the Stag just weren't so bad. If his attachment had some strong abilities, like if he had intimidating presence and martial training or something, like something. He needs something.
Yeah. I think insight on a cavalry attachment just isn't great. It's taking you from 1 rank to 2 ranks, the best case scenario, which isn't normally a massive jump anyway. Yeah. I mean, there's the cool synergy with Muster and Dragonstone Nobles, though, right? So when they retreat, they can obviously then charge into the flank, but they've sort of changed role now from being an Aggie solo to being a support piece. So they won't really take much from that card. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, that was one of the few bright spots was you could get some tricky stuff out with the Dragonstone Noble solo, but yeah.
so. We'll put Stannis Baratheon King of the Wall on the maybe pile for now, right?
Let's wait for the next update and see if they address him and Andrew.
That'll be really good. Okay, cool. So next up, that's it for Stannis's. Next up, we have Davos Seaworth, Hero of Blackwater. I will quickly just preface everything. So all of these are loyalty Stannis Baratheon. I'm not going to read out every single time because it's in a Stannis Baratheon army overview. It comes with outflank. So you may hold this unit off the table in reserve instead of deploying it at the start of any round. If you are not the first player, you may place one unit from reserve fully within short range of a friendly or flank table edge unactivated. And it comes with Pathfinder. So this unit ignores the dangerous, hindering, and rough keywords. Davos also ignores the usual attachment limits, which is big for Season 6 because you get those extra attachment points. So you're not looking to get extra infantry units on to fulfill those points of attachments. You can just double up on Davos Seaworth's unit. Also, for the keen-eyed people, they will see there are 4 tactic cards on screen now. We have Parlay, we have Fealty to the Crown, we have Everything, and Flea Bottom Tricks. Flea Bottom Tricks takes out Final Strike from the deck and replaces it. This is something we see on all of the Targaryen commanders, but the only time we see it anywhere else. Davos Seaworth, Hero Blackwater. What's his playstyle? Is he any good? And are the 4 tactic cards better than the 3 tactic cards?
So I really like Davos. I love that he got the change to ignore attachment restrictions, especially with this current patch. And I would say he gives you access to like a completely different play style than what you would normally get with most of your other Baratheon commanders, on either loyalty. So I think there's just so much uniqueness to him that makes him a fun choice. He does lose that Final Strike card, which is a big blow. But he's got some fun tools. He has Parlay, which works really well if you ever run some of those Dragonstone Noble solos. You can get them into short range of your opponent's most powerful, most expensive units, and use those Parlay cards, and those Dragonstone Nobles will only cost you 4 points to really slow them down, right? Fealty to the Crown's a solid card. If you can get your opponent to fail some panic tests, which you have some access to some panic tools with Rhllor Lightbringers or Rhllor Faithful. And then Flea Bottom Tricks, you can get pretty mobile, so you can outflank with Davos and really get into places where your opponent doesn't want you to be. Or you can always just hold off that outflank and then just deploy normally with it, right? Use it to get an advantage against your opponent in the deployment stage. And you don't even have to make an overly bold, crazy deploy behind your opponent move. You can just put them on your own flank next to all your other units. So I really like Davos. I'm not going to say he's like the strongest thing because he does lose that Final Strike. And I think Everything is on the weaker end of cards.
Has it got more value now with the additional attachments?
You can bring an attachment back, so that's nice. So Everything did gain a little boost there. So yeah, all in all, yeah, Davos, try him out. He's fun.
Nice. I'm glad you sort of covered a little bit outflank there, because I do feel that sometimes outflank can be a bit of a trap for players. I think players, especially newer players, really put a lot of investment in the fact they can bring a unit from the flank. But I agree with you. Sometimes I think it's better to actually deploy them as per normal, because I think that way you can or deploy them a little bit further up the board, maybe sort of like a second round into the game.
You could be phenomenal in what's the game mode where you have the 3 dragon eggs that make you movement speed 2?
Dance Dragons.
Dance with Dragons. Play him in Dance with Dragons on one of the dragon eggs that's on the flank, throw stakes down.
Yeah, nice.
Use your outflank, pick up the egg, ignore the damage from the stakes from Pathfinder, and then just start backing up.
Yeah, that's great. That's really nice tip there. Okay, cool. Just very, very quickly, ignores use your attachment limits. What attachments are you putting with him?
Well, that depends, right? What unit are you putting him in? So we're going to have him in a unit of Lightbringers and start shooting your opponent in the back with that outflank. You want a different attachment than if he was in a melee unit. So he could go great with just about anyone that has true conviction. He could stick him and Devan in the same unit if you want father and son together. You could place him with Axel Florent and have that kind of uneasy alliance between a non-believer Davos and a zealous Axel, and make that unit a Rhllor unit. Now Davos's cards don't have any benefit to Rhllor units, but intimidating presence is always quite nice. You could go just about any way you want. Throw a Red Priestess in, throw a Stag Knight Noble in. It really depends on the unit that you're putting him in. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Again, man, it's awesome when we talk about this stuff, how you reference back to the fluff, because I think it's very similar to the way that I try to play the game. I mean, it really relates back to the IP. So that's awesome. And yeah, that is an awkward conversation between him and Axel.
Yeah.
Sweet. Next up, we have Andrew Estamont. First of the Kingsmen. He comes with the True Conviction ability that we've been over before. He comes with First of the Kingsmen, so you can controlling the crowns and letter zones for tactic cards that target this unit. And while your opponent does not control crowns and letters, this unit may reroll any morale tests. It comes with Rush of Aggression, Reckless Fury, and the recently changed Assault Orders. So Andrew Estamont, First of the Kingsmen. This is. I feel they've tried to make him work with Kingsmen again by giving this while your opponent does not control crowns and letters to keep them alive a little bit longer, perhaps with a morale test. But it feels like he's fallen a little bit short of the mark. But I mean, if you want to play an aggressive commander, he's an aggressive commander. What is his actual play style? And how do you get the best out of him, I guess?
So he's the aggressive commander for Stay on This Side, which I feel has been kind of changed. So he did get the benefit of True Conviction being improved, but he has lost value in terms of his Assault Orders got weaker, right? And that used to be Assault Orders and Rush of Aggression were his two good cards. Reckless Fury is just a terrible card. It's very bad. It's another case of, hey, you're going to have a downside. Okay, so the upside I'm going to get is really great, right? No, it's just basically an insight on a card, and then you suffer damage for it. So it's a terrible card. His attachment, like I said, True Conviction gains some value. First of the Kingsmen is it's just an outdated ability. It just doesn't function anymore because Kingsmen have changed. Yeah. They're no longer recycling those Arsenals of Fury cards, so you don't necessarily need to count as controlling crown and letters for your cards all the time anymore. And then now he has a situational morale test where you can re-roll your morale test sometimes.
Yeah.
He's just he needs a rework. He needs to see some changes. I can't recommend playing him until maybe a future patch where he gets another look at.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. He needs rework because he needs to synergize with the Queens, with the Kingsmen again, because that's obviously his thing is being part of that unit. But for newer players that are just getting into the game, if you just want to run up people and roll dice and hit stuff, and you're probably the guy that you want to run, but just don't expect that you're going to have a great time at top end tournaments if you're going to run him at this stage. We're hoping that the patch will see a little bit of tweaking, and we'll get a newer version of Andrew come out, because everybody loves a ginger bearded commander.
Yes.
Next up, we have Axel Florent Commander, first the Queen's Men. So he comes with affiliation Rhllor. So this unit is a Rhllor unit, and that's innate. This cannot be taken away. There'll always be a Rhllor unit. He comes with Intimidating Presence. We've already covered that. He comes with Stalwart. We've already covered that. But just in case, this unit gains +2 to morale test rolls. And he comes with Fiery Resolve, R'hllor's Wrath, and Fiery Charge. I love playing Axel Florent Commander, but I haven't in a while. So what are we thinking about Axel Florent? What's his play style, and what sort of list are we seeing him in?
So Axel was your go-to kind of panic commander play style. His attachment is really, really good. Stalwart and Intimidating Presence are phenomenal abilities. And then in terms of his cards, Fiery Charge is great. It's always great to have an auto 6 charge, especially in a faction that has poor movement speed like the Baratheons do. And then he had his he has R'hllor's Wrath. Yes. So R'hllor's Wrath used to be a big panic test that you could do on your opponent. It received a nerf similar to the There's Too Many card for the Free Folk. So instead of increasing the damage your opponents take, now it just decreases the modifier on the test that they take. So it's lost a lot of its former power. And then Fiery Resolve, they can make someone panicked.
Yeah.
You can get an extra faith token on your R'hllor Faithful.
Yeah.
I think Axel used to be a lot better. I think he's still okay. I think I would like to see a little bit of tweaking to his tactics cards to make him work a little better with things like Melisandre NCU or the R'hllor Faithful. Have more like morale test inducements on your own cards for your own units, and continue to lean into like that panic game that he does. So if like, I don't know, like he needs a little bit of touches here and there. I think he's really close to being like a good commander. I think he's kind of right in the middle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I quite like him as a commander. Yeah, I think he has fallen quite far from where he was. It'd be nice to see him get a little bit of a buff. Next up, we have our final commander, Justin Massey, the Smiler. So he has the order tactical reposition. So start of enemy turn, target one friendly unit in short range. They perform a 3-inch shift. He comes with Inspiring Presence. This unit's morale stat becomes 5+, and he comes with a group reform, pressure supplies, and sudden retreat. Justin Massey, we're not taking him as a 2-point attachment now. Are we taking him as a commander?
I think there's a place for Justin Massey. I don't think he's not going to like wow anybody, but I think he does have some value as an archer commander, right? Now, I wouldn't necessarily place him directly in the archer unit itself because I think there's some better attachments that can go into them, but he does have some nice tools. He has that tactical reposition. He has some decent cards. His regroup and reform and his precious supplies can be used to keep units healthy. And having a sudden retreat is nice so that your archer units, if they get engaged, they can get unengaged and start firing arrows again. His inspiring presence is the bit that's a little difficult to work around because it makes the unit have 5+ morale when several units already have 5+ morale or better. Right. So that limits you to really just the cheaper units that are non-loyalty aligned, really Wardens, Sentinels, or Halberdiers.
Mm-hmm.
Faithful have better morale. You could stick them in Lightbringers, but I think there are better options. Kingsmen are already 5. Queensmen are already 5. Stag Knights are already 5.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of difficulty just like finding where to put him. But I do think as an archer commander, he gives another style of play available to the Stannis loyalty, which is nice to have. It's like we've seen a couple different styles of play. We've seen like panic game with Axel. We've seen a cavalry commander. We've seen a token commander, and so Justin Massey is kind of like your archer commander. So it's nice to have him. I think the inspiring presence is a little bit difficult, but if you can find a way to make it work, play it and have fun with it and see what you can do.
Okay, nice. So that is it for commanders. We're now moving on to NCU. So first and foremost, we have the non-aligned NCUs with Alistair Florent at 4 points with shifting loyalties. Alistair begins the game with 3 order tokens on him. Each time Alistair claims a zone, after resolving that zone's effect, you may remove 1 order token from him. If you do, move him from any empty zone or to any empty zone or switch zones with any other NCU. Shira Errol, Lady of Haystack Hall, 4 points. Supporter of Haystack Hall. Each time Shira claims the crowns, restore 1 wound to 1 friendly combat unit. Each time Shira claims letters, remove 1 condition token from 1 friendly combat unit. Each time Shira claims bags, if you move a token, place 1 condition token of that type on 1 enemy combat unit. So my opinion on these guys are Alistair feels a lot happier in Stannis loyalty, where there's a lot of this making sure your opponent doesn't control the crowns to get the most out of your kingsmen, queensmen, etc., etc., etc. Shira Errol, we spoke about her in Renly's side. We spoke about the fact that she's good for newer players because it basically gives you a bit more flexibility on the letters and bags, and that the crown was essentially the developer's way of trying to make us synergize a little bit better with stuff like Rose Knights with their healing and dealing and stuff. But I sort of feel like both of these may actually play better with a Stannis loyalty a list. But yeah, you're the expert. You tell me what you think.
Yeah, I think I agree pretty much almost all the way down the line. I think Alistair plays better with Stannis, helping those Kingsmen and Queensmen, like you said. And I think Shira plays a little better with Renly, being able to work with those Rose Knights and give Renly a little bit more access to the token play that he doesn't have as much access to as, say, someone like Stannis Rifle Heir does. Yeah, I think Alistair's a solid choice, and then Shira I probably would pick less often.
Yeah, I definitely. We're going to go through some really good NCUs in the next 15, 20 minutes. But the few times I play Stannis loyalty, I struggle to leave home with Alistair purely for the Kingsmen thing, because it just allows me to make sure I'm getting those rerolls in the grind for the Kingsmen. I don't know but then maybe that's then now been sort of balanced by the change to Truth and Fiction. Maybe be interesting to see how it goes, right?
Yeah, I went without him at the Invitational.
Yeah.
But I also lost 7 games at the Invitational, so there's some other really appealing NCUs, and so really it comes down to making that choice, right? And so he's great with Kingsmen and Queensmen, but we're gonna have to see some of these other NCUs we're gonna look at in a second here.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's get stuck into them then. So let's get into the Renly. Oh, sorry, Renly. That was close. Stannis loyalty specific NCUs. So first and foremost, we have Melisandre, the Red Woman. Is a 5-point NCU, so a bit of a pricey purchase there. She comes with Sacrifice to the Lord of Light, she comes with Influence ability. So when this unit claims a zone, attaches cards to a combat unit until the end of the round. When Melisandre influences a friendly unit, you may have them suffer 2 wounds and 1 panic test. If you do, target 1 enemy combat unit in long range. That enemy suffers 1 panic test with -2 to their roll and +2 wounds on failure. While influencing a friendly unit, that unit is a Rhllor. While influencing a friendly unit, that unit is a Rhllor unit, and its melee attacks gain vicious. So quite a lot of text to take on for that card. Next up, we have Axel Florent, Hand of the King, for 4 points. In R'hllor's name. Again, another influence ability. When this unit claims a zone, attaches card to a combat unit until the end of the round. Each time Axel influences an enemy unit, it becomes panicked. While influencing a friendly unit, when that unit is performing a melee attack, before an attack dice, the defender becomes vulnerable. So some really nice token output there. And Selyse and Shireen. So they 5 points. They come with fervent conviction. Again, another influence. So the third influence NCU we've got here. When each unit claims a zone, attach this card to a combat unit until the end of the round. While influencing that unit, each time it passes a morale test, one enemy it is engaged with suffers a wound and necessary sacrifices. So once per game, when a friendly combat unit would be destroyed, instead that unit is not destroyed and remains in play with D3 wounds until the end of the game. It is a Rhllor unit. So yeah, we've got 3 really nice NCUs. Melisandre has seen multiple changes since her release. I quite like this version of her. But yeah, 3 influence NCUs. How are we feeling about these guys?
I think there's a place for all of them. Melisandre, like you say, has had some changes. I'm not as big of a fan of her as I used to be. I don't like hurting my own stuff unless I'm going to get a really nice benefit in return. And her cost is you're automatically taking 2 wounds yourself, and then you're maybe taking more wounds on top of that with a panic test on yourself to give your opponent a panic test that hopefully they fail, but they could pass. So the damage to yourself is guaranteed, whereas the damage to your opponent is not. And I don't find that to be a very good trade. And then she's also seen a change to where she has to be in long range, which I think is a very fair change, but it is a little bit of a limitation of her reach that she used to have. I think arguably the best thing she gives is that Rhllor affiliation and vicious influence, right? So you can stick her on a unit like Kingsmen or even a unit like Crownland Scouts, and then you can have like your cards, like we talked about that One True King Stannis card. Was it Test of Faith? It can only be played on a Rhllor unit. She can unlock access to that for some of your other units. So Axel, very just good value. I'm not going to say he's the best NCU because I think there are more powerful NCUs, but just quality, a panic token or a vulnerable token. Now you would think about he'd probably want to go with rightful heir Stannis, and then he gives out panic tokens the most consistently, and rightful heir Stannis doesn't really play into the panic game, so he's not like starving for panic tokens, but I mean, still a token's a token, it's still good. And then if you're running, the other issue is if you're running him as an NCU, then you're not running him as his commander version or his attachment version. So that's kind of the issue like I see with Axel. Like quality good, access to tokens good, but he doesn't have that synergy, right, where it's like panic tokens with a panic commander, unless they took away access to like neutral commanders like Roose or Ramsay.
Yeah.
So he's good, but he's not like mind blowing, right? He's just good. And then Sleece and Shireen, I think they're the best of these 3, right? They come in at 5 points, but they have a really clutch ability to where, am I gonna die? No, I'm not. I'm not gonna die, at least not yet. And then after I do that, it also makes the unit Rhllor. So I think they're really good. And then I think their influence is also very good. It's stubborn tenacity without being called stubborn tenacity. So you could potentially double up on a stubborn tenacity unit, and every time you pass a morale test, the enemy of your choice that you're engaged with would suffer 2 wounds. So I quite like Sleece and Shireen. I do have to bite my tongue a little bit on them when people like Balon exist for the Greyjoys, who can bring a unit back from the dead with full 12 wounds, whereas Sleece and Shireen can only bring someone back with 3 wounds at most. Although it's not necessarily bringing back, it's more like preventing death. So there's that distinction there. But I think they're really good, but I think there are still bigger fish in the sea, right? But I like Sleece and Shireen quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, necessary sacrifice is a decent rule, and I'll tell you what, you wouldn't want that to be an army that has to the last as well. That would be really rubbish, wouldn't
Mm-hmm. There, you can have 3 not deaths.
it? Yeah, it's a bad day at work though when you get killed 3 times, isn't it? It's a really bad day at work. um, yeah, cool. Okay, sweet. Yeah, and I agree. Just to listen to you talk about Axel, I agree that I quite like him as an NCU. It's the first I've really read his card properly, so it's quite nice to see what he does. Okay. Next up we have Davos Seaworth, Hand of the King, Crescent, Master Dragonstone, Mace Dragonstone, and Patchface Patches. So Davos Seaworth, Hand of the True King, 4 points. Smuggler's Cunning. Davos begins the game with 3 order tokens on him. Each time a friendly unit charges, after rolling charge dice, distance dice, you may remove 1 token from Davos. If you do, you may re-roll any charge distance dice. Also, each time a friendly unit activates, you may remove 1 token from Davos. If you do, until the end of the turn, enemies engaged with that unit may not use orders or be the tactics or to target a friendly tactics cards. So that's a really nice ability. I've seen Davos used quite a bit in the past. Crescent, Mace Dragonstone, 5 points. Sacrifice for the king. So at the start of any round, you may activate Crescent. If you do, destroy Crescent at the start. At the end of the round. Obviously, this just allows you to either double tap or jump the gun. Loving Counsel. So each time Crescent claims letters, you may replace that zone's effects with draw 2 tactics cards and place any 1 condition token on an enemy unit. So basically a pseudo letter zone, extra letter zone. Patchface, 4 points. Misunderstood Omens. Patchface begins the game with 3 order tokens on him. At the start of the round, you may spend 1 order token from him. If you do, you may state the name of a tactics card. If your opponent has 1 or more tactics cards in their hand with that name, they must discard 1 tactics card with that name. Patchface, what I like most about Patchface is it rewards players for knowing the game, for understanding the commanders, for understanding play styles and elements of danger within the opponent's army. So I think this is, this is great. I love it when this sort of stuff happens. But anyway, I'll let you get into these 3 NCUs. I really like all 3 of them.
Yeah, Davos NCU was for a long time my favorite NCU. Having the ability to re-roll a failed charge can turn a game, right? That can change a game from being a loss into a victory. And then the ability to turn off orders and tactics cards could be really clutch into things like set for charge or Lannister supremacy come to mind, or shield wall. So he can help you offensively kind of push through some really tough defensive orders. The issue again is then, well, are you going to use Commander Davos or NCU Davos or Attachment Davos? You have 3 really great options, so there can be some hand-wringing there, but that's up to you to decide. What do you need in the situation? What do you need in the army that you're building? Where do you need him? Where can he be used best? Because unfortunately, you can only take him once. Crescent I really like, and Crescent is the reason why I didn't take Alistair NCU, because Crescent, he can turn the crown into essentially the letters, and then if I start with Crescent on crown, my opponent's usually not getting crown, and I'm usually securing that zone for my Kingsmen or Queensmen regardless. And then his other ability can be extremely clutch to be able to go before you go when you're first player, so you can essentially go twice, have 2 activations, or essentially steal first player from your opponent and go on the tactics board before the round begins. But he does perish at the end of that round, so it is a very hefty cost for that ability. And so if you're going to run him, try not to use that too early, because that can really handicap what you're trying to do if you go from 3 NCUs to 2 or 2 NCUs to 1, right? So he's got a really clutch ability. I like his how he improves the crown zone. and he kind of gives you that flexibility to where you maybe don't feel like you have to take Peter Baelish or Alistair all the time. But he has 5 points, and you have to use that sacrifice for the king well. And if you use it and it doesn't work, it can really feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Patch face, like you said, really rewarding if you know which cards to be on the lookout for. If you're a new player and you don't even know what the names of your opponent's cards are, I'd probably steer clear of patch face. But he is a really nice asset to have if you know you're going up against some really mean and nasty stuff. Like, you know you're going up against Drogo, and you know that in this situation, if he plays a ride-by attack, it'll be really bad for you because they'll get behind your whole army and you won't be able to turn around in time, and it would be really bad for you. Having someone like Patchface can be really good for that situation, right? Or if you know you're gonna secure a kill on a Greyjoy unit, but you need to make sure they don't have what is dead may never die. Or if you're going to be attacking a Night's Watch unit, you really want to make sure they don't play Shields that Guard the Realms of Men, So Patchface, super, super good. But he can miss. You're playing Go Fish, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say hold off on him until you are a bit more familiar with what the various tactics cards are in the various other factions, including your own. But if you feel like you've got a solid understanding of the game, Patchface can be really good. Another thing to keep in mind, you can always ask to see your opponent's discard pile. That is public knowledge. They have to show it to you so you can look through to see what they've already played, and you can do the math to figure out what the odds are if they have another card or not. They'll have 2 copies of each card. Base deck has 7 cards and then 3 commander cards, 2 of each. So if you can see if there's like, 1 copy's already been played, it's less likely that second copy's come up. Use the information available to you to make the best decisions there.
So we sort of hinted at before, and everything you said, I totally agree with. We spoke about it before, but once we've done the tactics deep dives, I'd love to get you back on the channel to do a special playing Patchface episode where we go through some of the more, well, go through different factions and basically talk about the cards that we'd be looking for if playing Patchface. Yeah. I think that'd be really. Do you know what? It's just a conversation to have. I think it'd be quite a good conversation. Sort of fishing out the cards that maybe we'd be looking for if we were playing against a certain faction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be a great episode.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, that's it then. We've got through all of House Baratheon stuff. We've done it in 4 hours, which is good. But 2 hours really, 2 hours of Baratheon. Unlike the episode with Mickey, which was 4 hours in total, which was obviously it's a lot of free folk to talk about. But they are the whole army, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, so again, I'll ask you the same questions that we did last time, but so season 6. Question number 1: do you feel that the restriction on neutral commanders will affect House Baratheon Stannis loyalty?
Not very much. Now, a little bit, like I mentioned, with regards to playing into like a panic style. If you didn't want to run Axel Commander, you could have run like a Roose Commander with an Axel NCU and like a Melisandre NCU. But outside of that, really, I feel like the faction will be just fine with their in-house commanders. I feel like there's a lot of good commanders to choose from, that they didn't need those neutral commanders. And I understand removing those neutral commanders for the health of the game and to make it easier for the devs to achieve balance.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I pretty much agree again. I don't play Baratheons any massive level, but I never felt myself playing very much neutral commanders for Baratheon, so I quite like to keep it in faction anyway. And secondly, for people that are listening to this episode, if they're still sitting on the fence, what would you say to them to convince them into a House Baratheon purchase to get into the game?
Well, for me, it helped that some of my favorite characters from the books, Stannis and Davos, are in House Baratheon. So I think if you have that tied to the IP and you like Davos as a character, you'll find places to put Davos into your armies. If you have no ties to the IP and you're just looking at it from a game perspective, I find the sort of march up the field and have a sturdiness to your units, a resilience to your units, and the ability where if your opponent runs into you face first, you can sort of rebuff them and have that retribution. I find that to be really satisfying. It really reminds me of like a Roman legion kind of feel, to sort of absorb your opponent's biggest hits and then be able to pay them back. So that has always appealed to me. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Other people like to play more sort of glass cannons. But even in the Baratheon faction, there are ways to play some of those other styles where you could run some squishy Rhllor faithful they don't have very good armor, but they can go and they're fast and they can hit pretty hard. So I think if you're on the fence, try them out. I've loved them. They're my favorite faction. I've played them for years. And I own every faction. So
that's awesome. And just to touch on something you said there about the IP. So I think of all the faction overviews I've done so far, this has probably been the episode where we've actually, a lot of the decent IPs, a lot of the named characters are actually very, very playable. I think that's quite nice to see that, because I think, you know, a man like yourself that enjoys the IP, I really enjoy the IP. I think it's great to be able to run the characters that you love from the books, and actually they play quite well. I mean, yeah, we spoke about a couple that maybe aren't quite as great as they could be. Hopefully we'll see some tweaks to them, but for the most part, all this Rhllor stuff has been great, and a lot of the characters have been quite playable, which is, you know, something that we don't see in all these faction overviews. So it's been really nice to hear that and to have that discussion with you.
yeah, I always love diving into the books.
Yeah, cool. Okay, Britt. Well, so again, Kurt, cheers for your time, man. I really appreciate it. It's been great having you on. If there's anyone that's going to talk to me about Baratheons, it should be you. You've been doing really well with them for a long time now, so I really appreciate your time and you coming on today.
I'm honored to have been selected to come on. Thank you, Grant.
No problem at all, mate. No problem at all. And if the people are listening, thank you so much for sitting through this for the last 2 hours. I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate you've given me your time to come here today and listen to what we've been talking about. If you do enjoy what we do, please do like the video, share it among your gaming groups, and if you like us enough to give us a little bit more, please do subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification. But for now, I guess we'll sign off with Ours is the Fury again. Cheers, Kurt.
Cheers, mate.